Hi, everyone. Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to today's author journey. I'm very excited today to have a multi genre author with me who is also a blogger and very prolific reviewer. She has recently launched a book called Losing It at 40. And yes, it's what you think. And I'm going to bring her up here today to share all of her uh, journeys and just what it takes to make your head wrap it around being a multi-genre author. So here is Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hello. Hi, Anne. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you. And just to share with everybody, Sarah and I are both in beautiful Nova Scotia, but in different towns. I think we kind of bookend the province, don't we?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in Halifax in sort of the capital city, and you're in the valley.
No, I'm in Pictou County.
Oh, in Pictou, okay. Do you
Yeah.
know what? I also always get Pictou and Pugwash mixed up.
Yeah. They're similar. They're
Yeah, well, it was
seaside.
they both start with a P, right?
Right.
Well, Sarah, I'm so happy to have you on today, and we go back a fair ways, but our first contact was actually through Sarah's son, who is a book reviewer as well, a booktuber. But we can have him on maybe another day. But what I'm really enthusiastic about is talking about what it takes to be a multi-genre author. And we'll delve a little bit into the self-publishing piece of it as well. But um, let's talk about that. Like, where do your ideas come from, and how do you decide which one you're going to pursue?
It depends on my mood, outside challenges, whatever's happening. Um, I started with Sending You Sammy, which is my children's book.
Hmm.
And that came about, I never planned to write children's. I was always poetry and I guess prose.
Hmm.
Um, but I was in New Brunswick at the time, and the childhood obesity rates were through the roof. The
Mm,
childhood literacy rates were plummeting. So
I'm going to
I
bring that.
happened to be, um, I was working at a call center at the time where we were allowed to color between calls. And I happened to have I think it was Spider-Man. It was Spider-Man. I had a Spider-Man coloring book, but I
I
didn't
love
have,
Spider-Man.
yeah, it was just simple, like mindless, like you could just kind of zone out. And I'm not usually a colorer, but it was something to do when we were waiting for calls. But I ran out of red pencil crayon. Well, how can you color Spider-Man without red?
Red.
So I had a lot of yellow and green, and I just happened to color him yellow and green. And I said, he looks like a banana. And funny enough, sitting beside me was a newspaper with the headline Childhood Obesity Rates Soar, Childhood Literacy Rates Decline. And I thought, what better than a Banana Boy story to get people excited to eat bananas, eat healthy, and with the childhood literacy rates low, it was mostly with boys. Boys
Interesting.
don't don't read as much as girls in I think in any aspect or any age. And I just happened to write a little story about Banana Boy, and that happened to be um, just something that came out. So at the end, I said, "Well, this is, I think, good enough for readers." So I had my nephew at the time was 5 or 6, and he loved it. So
Mm,
it grew from there. So I pitched it to a couple of places. They weren't, they didn't love it as much as I did, I guess.
mm.
Um, so I said, let's just self-publish it. The story needs to be out. So my husband, who works used to work for a printing company, knew all the ins and outs of printing and putting it together. Um, put it together, and we found an illustrator who used to actually work for Sesame Street, which is a funny,
Wow.
wonderful story. Yeah, he was excellent. Um, anyway, so that started that, and that I was, and it's supposed to be a series. It's going to be a series at some point
Mhm.
about this Adventures of Banana Boy. So from there, because the illustrator did cost money, I had all these short stories collected that I said, let's
Mhm.
put out a short story collection. So then Brain Tales came out, and it's just a mix of short stories I've written throughout the years.
Mhm.
Then I got a book called The Fiction Writer's Workshop. And it basically said to do I went through each chapter, each workshop, each little lesson plan, um, and it had you write a list of titles of just rhyming words, random words that come together and
Oh,
rhyme and
fun.
might be inspiring. So
Mhm.
out came Arm Firm, the title. And that was when CSI and Dexter and Bones were on TV. And I
Uh-huh.
said, like, I'm fascinated by forensic sciences. So
Mhm.
let's write a story. Well, in the middle of that, my son came along and I said, on maternity leave, I'm going to finish this novel. I'm going to have it
Mhm.
published when I go back to work.
That's the
And
arm
it's not,
farm? The
this
arm
is
farm?
Arm Firm.
Okay. One
So
of the
it's
covers I didn't grab.
no problem. Um, so it's interesting because I've always been a person that if you tell me I can't do something, I'm sure as heck gonna do it. I'm
You're
gonna
gonna do it.
go
Good for you.
and prove you wrong,
I
whether it
love
takes 10 years or not. So the week that I went back to work, I had a book of in my hand. People say you can't do it, like you're gonna have a baby at home. Nope, I'm gonna do it. So I did it.
it.
And then I'm rambling now, but
No,
so
it's
in the
okay.
midst of that, I had somebody reach out to me. I was still in New Brunswick at the time and said, "You should write. You should enter the young adult, children's slash young adult Writers Federation of New Brunswick contest. You should submit to it." Well, I had a toddler at my feet. I just finished the novel. I'm like, how can I do that? Somehow I sat down and wrote Blood Day, the short story.
Right?
And the word limit, I wanna say it was like 10,000 words. Well, I got out 4,000. And I said, "You know what? I'm just gonna submit it. The deadline's in a week. I'm gonna put it in." Well, it ended up winning. So then
Wow,
when at the ceremony,
congratulations.
thank you. It was weird because I'm like when I write a story, I'm so zoned out. I'm
Right,
so like the characters tell me where they're going and I don't and
right.
then it tells me where it ends. Um
And it's not, I mean, it's not linear, like, you go from children's to supernatural to
yeah.
dystopian to romantic
Absolutely.
romance. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
and that, like, romance to sum this up, romance was the furthest thing I honestly, I don't read much romance. Yes, the books I have romance in them.
Mhm, mhm,
I don't read a Harlequin, I don't read,
mhm.
like, um but my husband came home one day and he said, "I just heard on CBC that romance is the number 1 seller right now
Making a
because
comeback.
people are" yeah, well,
Mhm.
he said with e-readers especially,
Yeah.
if people are on a bus, they're not so embarrassed to read a romance. Whereas if they have the paperback, they're having Fabio on the cover and that it's very obvious that they're reading a smutty romance. So he's like, "I think you should
No
write that." And
embarrassment there.
well, that's yeah, so the ebook takes that all away, right?
Isn't that interesting? I
So that
wanted to pause just for a second,
yep.
say hi to Sue and Lana who have joined us,
Hi, Sue and
and
Lana.
Lana's
Thank you.
reminding you sending you Sammy, and that was the cover I had up,
Yeah,
earlier when you were talking about Banana Boy, but,
right.
so I still I wanna get a handle on how you decide which of these things or have they sort of come to you one at a time, or do you have a whole bunch simultaneously?
No, they cut it did like somebody asked me the other day, "Can you just sit down and write?" And I can.
Mhm,
I have, especially with my 12-year-old home, I have limited time. I sit
mhm.
down and write, and whatever somebody challenges me with, if they send me a contest for
Have to remember
poetry
that.
or for a romance, it's always okay. I'm just gonna and I put it out one time. I said, "Send me a topic to write about. Send me a first sentence and all," because I just love that
Mhm.
I sit down, I stare, and out it flows. And then
Yeah,
at the end, I'm like, I don't know where these characters came from. I don't know what they were doing, but it's done. That story is told, and
that's
it's
awesome.
yeah,
Well,
it's weird.
Well, it's beautifully weird though, and I
Yeah.
always and as of course as a writer myself, I can certainly relate. And I always like to ask people, why do you write?
Hmm.
I know that's a biggie.
That is a big question. Um, Not to go off rambling again, but my childhood was complicated. My childhood was not bad. I mean, it wasn't, we've heard of a lot worse, but so I found my peace. I found myself going out into the woods. I grew up in Nova Scotia, going out into the woods. And
Mm.
it was funny because I would come up with these brilliant, I thought they were brilliant. Like I was 8 years old, right?
I
Thought of these
love it.
brilliant poems, but never had a paper or a pen to put them down. And by the time I got back to the house, they were gone, just
Mhm.
poof. Um, so I think just that introverted, that's my voice. That's where, even though I don't write nonfiction, I do.
Mhm.
I'm a journalist as well. Um,
Mhm. One of your
it,
many
it
hats.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever, any avenue in writing has always been, and that's always been what I was recognized for.
Mhm.
So it just, that moment of that self-reflection, that escape your normal humdrum life, especially this last 2 years,
Mm.
you can get out, and by going within and just coming up with this characters that may or may not be part of you, and
Right.
do what you would never imagine doing.
Isn't it wonderful? It's such an escape, and
Yeah,
people who love to read also get that. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
picking up a good book and being the person who's written that book that people are enjoying and getting, an escape or anything from is so rewarding. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I guess that could be what motivates you to review books as well, because not only is Sarah a multi-genre author, and a blogger and a journalist, but she also reviews books, which, is like kudos to you. So what motivates you to do that?
Just that connection of, and Sue and Leanna talked about this in a previous
Mhm.
episode a lot. Um, you know that the author is living in a lonely world, whether they're introverted or extroverted. When they're sitting down to write a book, it's a lonely, lonely world. And to know that, like you said, that feeling of somebody out there read my book, somebody
Mhm.
took the time to pick this off the shelf, and like they said, I don't tend to write a negative review because I can see the value in every book, whether it's a genre that I would choose personally.
Mhm.
That has value. The words, the imagination, the that somebody put this effort into it,
Mhm.
um, and that, yeah, reading reviews and knowing. I mean, Lana wrote great ones. Sue wrote a great one that they laughed out loud at something that I forgot about, right? Because I wrote it a year ago, and I'm like, oh, that's great that that reached you. Like, and they, yeah, so I think that just the supporting and supporting local especially is
And doesn't
great.
it feels right.
Absolutely.
So I want to take some time to actually talk about a few of your books, and I'm going to bring up those covers again. But let's talk about losing it at 40.
Mhm.
So, where did that idea come from? And I know, okay, so I did say contemporary romance, but it's not a real c- true blue romance, right? It's got lots of twists and turns, um, and it's not your typical romance. And
That's good. I'm not
yeah,
typical in any way.
no, no, I would not be a word I would use to describe you. And this book, it's interesting because, losing it, of course, means the main character's virginity, and it's an interesting read. So tell us a little bit about where this came from and why.
Sure. Um, as I mentioned, my husband came home and referenced the CBC
Right.
segment on ebooks spiking romance novels sales. And then I was between, so woman of many hats. I'm a journalist. I review books for a magazine quarterly. I do a whole lot of things. I was between deadlines and I said I don't and between projects and
In
I
your
said to a
spare
friend
time.
in my spare time and I work at night. So I was at the time I was off at 11 o'clock at night and then I would get up at 7 to take my son to school. So my sleep time was limited.
Mhm,
Anyway, I was talking to a friend after my shift and I said I need something. I need a new project. So she said, "Well, just write." I said, "But I don't know what to write." And she said, "Just write." So that was like the first line. Like, I don't know where to start with my story. It was a literal, I
mhm.
don't know where to start with the story.
Right.
And I like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like romance, but I don't know the typical romance type set and plot outline.
Mhm, mhm,
And I'm a pantser. I don't for anybody who doesn't know, a pantser just I say I write like I read. So I write chapter by chapter. I don't
mhm.
know what's happening next. I don't know where the story's going versus a plotter who outlines and details and brainstorms and knows it all.
I'm a
I have
pantser girl.
no
I'm a
idea.
pantser.
Yeah, excellent.
Way
There's
back.
so the famous Di is it Diana the
Gabaldon?
Outlander? Yeah.
Gabaldon. I
She's a
love her.
pantser. And I'm like, I can reference that, like a
Yeah,
famous pantser.
I love
Um,
it.
so I did, yeah, it was just 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, okay, I have 15 minutes. I'm
Mhm,
gonna write. And for the next 2 to 3 months, for 15 minutes after my shift, I would turn on my personal laptop and write. And it all came together. It was like every night, like I needed that 15 minutes of before I go to bed, I'm gonna write this story. And it
mhm.
came out and it made me laugh and even if I was in the middle of a scene, I would go to bed and then I wake up excited to write that scene again. And I'm like, no,
Yes.
you'd figure it out at night, right? Like
Yeah, and
so that
it kind of lends itself to the whole theme of it because she herself is quite surprised by things that sort of, crop up in
yeah,
her life, and all of a sudden, she's ready, and it's like this plethora of men that, sort of fall into her lap,
right.
figuratively and literally kind
Yeah.
of.
And I don't like the losing it at 40, it was a title that came together with my beta readers.
Mhm,
I didn't take it as what everybody thinks it as. I thought like she lost her stress, her worry, her
oh,
concern for doing everything right, and she
mhm,
decided just like, "I'm gonna start finding myself," right? So
mhm,
more of a self,
yeah,
but if you wanna look at it that way, I mean, she does that too, but
mhm.
somebody looked at the cover and said, "Oh, I thought it meant losing weight," which I looking at the cover, she's turning
Oh,
her food
no.
into a cupcake. I'm like, whatever you think it might be,
Isn't that
it
funny?
should make
Well,
you
and
laugh."
and you know what, backed up to your point about, letting go of the stress and things like that. Sometimes that's what it takes to find, special relationships for things to
Absolutely.
come to you in abundance. So
Yeah.
anyway, let's leave that, and anybody who wants to explore a little further, jump right in. And just a little quick note on sending you Sammy. Just talk a little bit about this. This is all about encouraging kids to eat healthy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, it was coloring Spider-Man green and yellow, and it was just that idea of kids sometimes do choose healthy. They choose fruit over and vegetables over a cookie,
Mhm.
um, and it kind of encourages that, and it's that fast-paced. It's not. I'm not a big promoter of violence. So there's a superhero, there is a battle. It's more of that battle of making the right decision and
Inner
versus
battle. Mhm.
yeah, like it
Mhm.
versus having the weapons. Like your weapons is your mind and your positivity and your mental wellness, I guess,
Mhm.
overall.
I love superheroes. Let's promote this one. I love this. Sending you Sammy. And then we jump to, oh my goodness, like death and dying. Can you tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about Life Unimitated?
I think that was born out of just this idea of assisted suicide,
Mm.
where somebody can't live the way that they want to live. I,
Mm.
it's a big dilemma. It's a big, big thought. And it was just, let's look at it from a different perspective.
And it's very
So,
timely. right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And this is about 5 years old, I wanna
Mhm.
say, but it
So
just
even before Maid, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
So just the character came out to say, like, he's a golfer and that's what he wanted to do, and he couldn't do it anymore. So at what point do you change avenues, or do you yeah.
And
Just a heavy, heavy book.
it's
Heavy story, short story.
yep, short story, and Save Your Breath. Talk about
Yeah.
Save Your Breath. Yes, I'm
That one's
surprising
timely
you
now
with
too.
which ones I picked, aren't I?
Absolutely. This was born there's a contest called I think it's Aftermath,
Mhm,
and they pick the title, they pick the not the title, they pick the topic, they pick the word count, you need to write the story, and it was, like, the end of the world, and that I think this, in many aspects, was the hardest book I've ever written, a short story,
mhm,
um, just because that level of depth and despair and gruesome and just the fantastic idea of the end of the world and what do you do? And if you
mhm,
ran out of oxygen, how do you help somebody else if the world's deprived of life, essentially? So
mhm.
that's another heavy one.
Right, and of course, this also brings a whole other, trope and a whole other, literary device into your writing realm, and that's world creation, whether I
Yeah,
mean, it might still be on Earth, but it's sort of post-apocalypse Earth, kind of.
right.
So, I mean, where does your mind go in order to create a whole new environment, a whole new world, new surroundings?
Into a very dark pit. Uh, I read this out. This was written. I was part of a writing group, and somebody wrote it, and she's like, "I don't know how you got into that headspace," and I just don't. I sit down, I stare at a blank page, and
Mhm,
I tell their story, and it just seems. I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert said, these people come to you, and if you're not ready for it, if you're not the right vessel for these to speak their truth,
yeah,
move on, let it go to somebody else, and
right.
that happened to be somebody challenged me to enter this contest, so there I went.
Wow, that's cool. Lana says that she read it, uh,
Yeah.
and, Cindy's joined us. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Cindy.
Lee, our Lily's Secret author. It's fascinating that you write so many different genres and your methods writing when the inspiration hits. I
Hmm.
think that's, and sometimes not even knowing inspiration is hitting, but you sit down and all of a sudden it comes out, right?
Yeah, making it
Um,
making it visit.
yeah, Lena has a question. She says, when you're writing about the heavy subjects, do you find you need a lot of time to decompress when you're finished? Really good question.
Not really. Like, once I'm done the story, it's done.
Mhm.
I don't like people say, like, "Do you reread it?" Like, what like, with Blood Day, especially, they said,
Mm.
like, "We want more," and I'm like, "But that's all there is." Like, I don't know. Yeah,
Speaking too
that's the
much?
novella. So
Right.
the short story, I thought, "Okay, it's done," and just, like, put it away. I check out, I move on to the next adventure, right?
Mhm. And
And
then comes Banana Boy.
yeah, exactly. Well, and then some people are like, "Well, no, we want more, we want," and I'm
Mhm.
like, "I have to go back to that," and it's kind of a struggle to go back to that place
Mhm.
because I want to move on. I want to challenge myself with another completely different storyline.
Right. Okay, so that's a really nice segue into what are you working on now?
I am working on the sequel, which I never thought was gonna happen, to Losing It at 40
Oh,
because
yay!
people
I
wanted
hear
those
people
characters
cheering out
again.
there.
I
Do they
again,
say
I was done. This is my romance, this is my
yeah.
delve into that new genre. I did it. I'm
Yeah,
done.
yeah. Well, that's
People
the
want
also the
more.
answer to Lana's question. You lighten it up a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Aren't yeah.
exactly. Yeah, add that humor and the unbelievable circumstances, which are believable, but
Mhm.
hopefully not all to one person all of the time.
Right.
Um, so I'm about 2/3 of the way through that. So I'm
Mhm.
just kind of, and as I mentioned, I put on my Facebook page, I was looking for beta readers
Mhm.
because when I'm done. And I want to see, with Losing It at 40, I'm like, is this a worthwhile romance? Is this what people are looking for when they want a romance book? And it was so inspiring, motivating that people are like, "Yes, I absolutely love it." And
Mhm.
out of the I think I had 8 people originally, I think 4 said, "Oh, it's way too spicy, but it's good." And 4 said, "It's not spicy enough, but it's good." Like, so
Right.
you can't please everyone with a book, but it
I
was just
thought
that happy medium of
it was nicely middle of the road
the
spicy.
right
Yeah.
amount of spicy,
I
yeah.
think so, I think so.
Good.
And, just to reiterate, anybody who's listening and watching, if you are interested in being a beta reader for Sarah, go to her Facebook page. Oh, I forgot the dot, www.facebook.com/author Sarah Butland, and, give her a little wave, give her a shout out, send her a message. You can also visit her website, um, sarahbutland.com, for if you want to learn more about her books, that are all on Amazon. So there's, full length novels, there's novellas, short stories, and children's books. So with the time that we have left, let's talk about the self-publishing part of your journey.
Sure.
And you mentioned a little bit earlier that, you kind of put out some feelers and, people came back and said, not, we're not really interested in
Yeah,
it. And you sometimes, I know in my experience, children's author who already has illustrations or an illustrator, most traditional publishers won't pick them up,
right.
because they want to assign their own illustrators. As a hybrid publisher, I love it when people come to me with the illustrations already,
Yeah.
as long as they're good, right? So we have a
Yeah.
couple of I have a children's book coming up soon that we'll talk
Yay.
about it another time. And the author is the most amazing illustrator. So who would ever turn her away? So I sure did.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that journey and how that has unfolded for you.
I it's a fault of mine and maybe not a fault of mine. I'm impatient.
Ha
And
ha
I
ha.
didn't I thought like this is the time to get Sammy out with these
Mhm,
headlines making they were everywhere in Canada especially.
mhm,
Again about the childhood obesity and
mhm,
literacy rates. And I just thought like why wait?
mhm.
Like
And your husband
why
being in printing probably helped make that
yeah,
decision
he
too.
knew the right I mean, yeah, he knew the right ways to set it. It was
Mhm,
we had the picture well, we got the pictures.
mhm,
It just made sense, and then when we came out with, Brain Tales, I self-published that or independently published because he had a publishing company that we put them under, so
mhm. Good.
which is similar, but, and it was just that idea of we don't wanna I don't wanna wait. The story needs to be told, and
Mhm,
I worked with, writers in the schools in New Brunswick, and
mhm,
it was the time, like, timing was just perfect for that because the
mhm,
kids were excited for this book. So then it, not that it was easy, but we had the account, we had the resources, we had the to keep doing it. Not to say that I don't want to be mainstream published. If
mhm.
anybody from Nimbus or any is
Is
watching,
listening.
yeah. Um, it just it worked for me at the time. It was
Mhm,
and then Losing It at 40 is, of course, published by a company in the US.
mhm,
Um, gives me a new perspective of things.
mhm.
There's good and bad. There's work no matter what,
Yeah,
and business side of things no matter what.
there's
So
always lots of pros and cons
right.
no matter how. And
Yeah,
it's all about getting the story out, isn't it?
exactly.
Right,
I
and
just at
Sue
the time I
says
pitched
uh,
sorry.
I was gonna say,
Go ahead.
Sue says hopefully it will the sequel will be done by Bookstore Romance Day.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, just putting it out there.
Yeah, Sue.
Uh, Lana says, "Forgive me if I missed this, but do you have a regular routine? I know you said you had that late night writing, early morning run back to it period. Is that a normal writing routine for you?"
Not anymore. No,
Yeah.
I've never been like some people, and I don't know, you're a writer too, Lana. And I can't wait for, I think it's the loneliest little
Lonely Little
lighthouse to come out.
Lighthouse. Oh my
I'm so
gosh. I
excited
can't wait
for
to have
her.
it in my hands.
um, no, I've never like, I'm jealous of people that say they can wake up at 5 a.m. and write for an hour.
Right?
No way.
No,
Or the opposite, that they write for an hour at midnight or whatever.
not a chance.
My life is not routine.
Right. I
It's the
cannot do
right way to do it.
that. Uh-huh.
Um, so whenever my schedule permits me to have half an hour usually.
Mhm.
15 minutes is a good time for me to write, but that half
Mhm.
hour gives me that buffer. Um, I'll sit down and do it. And some days it's forcing myself to take that half an hour,
Mhm.
but it's the best half hour of the day. Like
Right.
whatever. But right now I'm working till midnight and up at 7:30. So
Wow.
no, I'm not writing after my shift anymore. I'm writing when William's in school and I don't have cleaning that is begging to be done
Mhm.
under
William, who we
priorities.
all know and love as Wild Willie.
Yes, that's true.
Well,
Wild Lily's book reviews.
Wild Willie's book reviews, just as a little aside, right? Um, it always impresses me when I read about, authors who can do that, what you were saying, like the half hour or hour or 2 hours in the morning before the kids get up, or
Yeah,
how it's amazing to me. I know for myself, when I wrote both my novels, the first one, I had just made a huge move to Dubai, and
right.
was in between jobs. Had decided to go freelance. Was basically sat down, was like writing about my experiences and things like that. So that's actually when I wrote my first traditionally published book that was about Dubai. But then I started to write about the change that I was going through, menopause. Um, but I had all day, every day, and I literally sat down for 30 days, 8 hours a day, and I wrote that book. Right?
Wow.
So for me, I can't keep coming in and out of it.
Okay.
It's too disjointed for me, and it
Yeah.
takes me, my older, 57-year-old brain, it takes me a bit to get back into it. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm impressed with you being able to grab the time that you can
I
between.
have to,
I
right?
know.
Like with with life,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't have that 8 hour and I would love to have that 8 hours. I'm not sure if I'm yet designed for that 8 hours, but
right.
um and I do want to shout out too. I volunteer for Read by the Sea, which Lana's going to. Just a side
Yay!
note.
Of
Yay!
course,
So
we
it's
all
just that
have to.
whole yeah, I need to be part of the literary world, and it's
Mhm,
just kind of a with all the hats that I'm juggling and all the I love deadlines, but
mhm,
deadlines are also intimidating. So it's just kind of that,
mhm.
okay, let's take the time now that I don't have a deadline looming and write and
Yeah,
whatever comes out comes out. And I think that's why I'm wherever I am in my life at that time, that's what comes out. And
I
the
love
genre
it.
determines itself.
I love it. And Read by the Sea, for those of you who are listening, is in July. Yay!
Yay!
So take a
In
look,
River
and
John, Nova Scotia.
River John, woo, which is a wonderful place, and you can stop by Mabel Merple's bookshop on
Absolutely.
your way. Well, I can't believe this. We're already 30 minutes, and so much more that we could touch on. So will you please come back to the author journey again sometime?
Absolutely.
Do
I
you have
appreciate
any oh, it's my pleasure. Do you have any final thoughts or words? Great advice that you're giving.
advice. Do what you love. Find time to do it every day. It's whether you can have to wake up an hour early or squeeze it in before lunchtime or squeeze it in before whatever else. Find that half hour a day. It makes a difference.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Sarah, and please, please, we will have you back, and, we'll probably see you at Read by the Sea. Maybe we'll do a little
Absolutely.
quick little broadcast from there.
Excellent. With Wild Willie there too. I'll drag him there.
Absolutely. Well, my goodness.
Perfect.
I think he just, tweeted that he was gonna be there, so
Absolutely.
hoping to see him there for sure.
Yeah,
We have lots of thank yous, and thank you everybody for watching. And so we'll see Sarah again really soon. And thank you for joining us. And have a wonderful week. And I'm wearing green because we're coming up to St. Patrick's Day on Thursday. Hopefully, you'll have a chance to maybe drink a green beer or two. So for now, it's Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing saying goodbye, and we'll see you on the next author journey. Take care.